Come in. Welcome. I'm E.G. Marshall. Welcome to the fear you can hear. Welcome to the sounds of suspense. It was the ill-fated Prince of Denmark, Hamlet, who lamented, "The time is out of joint. Oh, cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right." Many people before and since have echoed the same cry of despair, but none with more compelling justice and reason than Ethan Vigil, clock maker and destroyer. Ethan Vigil, for whom a special clock struck a magic and an evil hour.
Got your box in. Your move, Jake.
No, don't rush me. I'm thinking. God in heaven, Ethan, how can you stand that infernal racket?
What racket? Oh, you mean the clock striking? I don't even notice it anymore. Well, go ahead. What do you want to give up?
No. Who can think of a chess move with all hell breaking loose? From now on, start our games after midnight. Have to drive a man stark, staring mad. I swear to Sam Hill, Ethan, you deliver.
The only two living things left in the room at that terrifying moment, as time stood still, were myself and that damnable machine.
Our mystery drama, Time and Again, was written especially for the Mystery Theater by Ian Martin and stars John Beal. It is sponsored in part by Anheuser-Busch Incorporated, brewers of Budweiser, and by the Kellogg Company, makers of Kellogg's Special K cereal. I'll return shortly with Act One.
When you drink beer, do you tilt the glass?
Few of us can resist the fascination of an auction, and I'm no different than most, which is how and why I happen to possess this curious document, which reveals a bone-chilling account of how many lives were lost so uncannily and eerily to the inhuman demands of what Ethan Vigil called that damnable machine. The tale I'm about to tell... No, wait. If you can manage to decipher his cramped longhand, let Ethan Vigil confess for himself.
I, Ethan Vigil, clockmaker by trade, am writing this in case, when the moment comes, I fail to destroy the hourglass clock. For if I fail, someone must destroy it. Kill it. End its ghastly existence before God knows how many innocent people will die to satisfy its insatiable thirst. The clock itself came into my possession more or less by accident. I was working late at my shop one night about a year ago, and I heard a tapping on the closed glass door. Nation, some people can't read signs. Darn fools like to break that glass.
Stop that. Can't you see I'm closed? And Governor, please, let me in.
Oh, get on with you.
You won't be sorry. Give me a chance. I'll give you the chance of a lifetime. Look.
It was raining heavily, the water streaming down the glass, but the object he had drawn from the cover of his pea jacket drew my eyes like a magnet. It was a clock, the like of which I'd never seen. It was shaped like an hourglass, with a strange-appearing pendulum hanging in the lower half and the face in the upper half. And in the place of the figure 12, at the top of the face, was the numeral 13. I had to see that clock more closely.
Oh, bless you, Governor. You're a lifesaver, you are.
What do you want?
Oh, I want you to have a look at this here clock.
The clock is the only reason I let you in. I'd like to have a look at it myself. Let's take it over to the bench. You want this clock repaired?
I want to sell it to you, is what I want.
I hope I don't regret this, but come on to my place in the back. There's a fire in there to dry you up a bit. You better back up to that fire. Where'd you get this clock?
Why, it came into my possession when its owner died.
Does it run?
Well, now, that there clock, it doesn't run. I'd be the first to admit it.
I'll give you $20.
Oh, now, look here.
$20. Take it or leave it.
Well, I may be down and out, but I know a good thing when I see it, and I don't intend to be taken advantage of by somebody else.
Doesn't seem to be any question of who's being taken advantage of.
Harriet.
Ethan, who is this person?
He's a customer, more or less. This is my sister-in-law.
It's near on to midnight, and my poor sick sister is pining upstairs for her husband to bring her a little faith and consolation.
Oh, now, Mom, I certainly am sorry to intrude on family problems.
Then don't. Ethan, get rid of this man.
You better go.
Yeah, but what about our business and the clock?
Well, $20 is all I have to my name.
I'll take it.
Don't you do it, Ethan.
Oh, mind your own business for once, Harriet. I had little doubt my sailor, who called himself Harry Stubbs, had dubious title to that strange clock. But like all collectors, to own something totally and unreservedly unique is an overriding obsession.
Is he gone?
Yes.
Oh, just look at this place after you had that derelict in here. Lights on all over the place, eating up money. To say nothing of good hard cash thrown away on that piece of junk on the table.
It was my own money.
What own money? Oh, you and Henrietta wouldn't even have a roof over your heads, let alone a piece of business, if it weren't for me. Oh, no, it's my money that keeps you going, and don't you forget it. Now, you lock the door to the shop.
I still have some repairs left to do.
You'll have to get up early tomorrow and do them.
I just wanted to have another look at this clock.
You'll waste no more time or light or fuel down here tonight. If it wasn't for good money paid out, I'd take that piece of junk on the table and dump it in the rubbish.
How I wish she'd done just that. Let the city collect it with the morning trash and bury it forever. But fate hadn't planned it that way. So I went upstairs from Harriet to face another problem I didn't know how to solve. My ailing wife, Henrietta.
Ethan? is that you?
Yes, Henrietta.
Where have you been?
Working, dear. Are you hurting?
Oh, when don't I hurt?
I know. How's your back?
It isn't my back. It's my stomach, Ethan. I'm scared. I've been afraid to think of it, but I know Harriet's sure I've got...
No, none of that. You just get off to sleep. That's what you need.
You just don't know how it is to be suffering every blessed minute of every day.
As I slipped under the covers and lay wide awake beside Henrietta, snoring away, my mind went back to the strange clock on the table downstairs. The intriguing mystery of a mechanism I had never even imagined in 40 years of clockmaking. And the enigma of why 13 replaced the numeral 12 on the face. All the next morning, between my infrequent customers, I puzzled and poked and tried to reveal the workings of this bizarre clock. But by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, when I was completely stymied, my wife surprised me by coming out to the bench in her bathrobe. Henrietta, what's wrong?
I've been calling for someone. Where's Harriet?
Oh, she went to market. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I've got those blinding headaches again. Could we send for Dr. Royce? Is that the old clock that Harriet told me you threw away hard-earned money on?
It's a very valuable antique, an original. And it was my money.
Does it run?
No.
And what good is it?
It's worth $20 as it is, at least. In working condition, it could be priceless.
Can you fix it?
Oh, I don't know.
Why not?
Well, look at it, Henrietta. Have you ever seen anything like it? First of all, the hourglass shape of the case.
What's inside?
Well, that's the problem. Except for the two round glass windows. And they're not even glass. I don't know what they are.
What window?
Well, the one for the clock face in the upper cup, if you want to call it that, and the one in the lower inverted cup, where you can see what looks like a pendulum.
Oh, can't you shake it and get that to swing?
That doesn't seem to be the way it's activated. It's quite stationary.
Funny lopsided shape. Maybe it melted or something. Can't you get into the works?
Oh, only through this lid on the top. Now, look. There's all you can see of the works. Very old. Wooden gears, wooden pinions, wooden axles. No way to lift it out. I can't even get my hand in there to try.
Let me. It's so silly. There must be some way to... Ow!
What is it?
Look what your silly old clock has done.
What's the matter?
My finger is bleeding. It felt like something bit me.
Oh, come on, let me see. Why, it's just a scratch. Scarcely drew blood.
Just the same, I'm not taking any chances with that dirty old clock. I could end up with blood poisoning. I'm going to run this underwater. Now, you get me a bandage and some disinfectant.
Right with you. I was suddenly aware that the clock was running. And its beat was the sound of the human heart.
But Ethan didn't follow his wife right away, because suddenly he had become conscious that the dead clock had come to life, that it had started to record time again, and that the sound of its beat was very different from all other clocks. It was a sound akin, if not completely similar, to the beat of the human heart. I shall return shortly with Act 2. Whatever his wife had accidentally touched, the clock had begun to run and remained running steadily, without any sign of stopping. Ethan checked that Henrietta's wound was little more than a surface scratch, and returned to observe... But let him tell his own story for himself, as he wrote it in his confession.
My examination of the clock as it ran made it even more of an enigma. Behind the face, beneath the lid, the gears I saw engage, second by second, operated the hands that told the time. What motivated them was obvious, the strange mass that I had supposed a pendulum weight but which now, quite clearly, was a diaphragm or pump, opening and closing to create energy, in a motion like a human fist, or... Yes, suddenly I knew why the irregular shape was familiar, like the human heart. But what, in turn, motivated that, or fueled it, was the ultimate mystery. Everything about this clock was different, exotic, strange. Even its chime for the hours, plangent, plaintive, almost the sound of a human voice. I watched it irresistibly all day, all during the night, while I waited for Dr. Jacob Royce to come and examine my wife. Even while I waited for the result of that examination.
What the devil are you doing out here, Ethan?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jake. Just observing this clock. It's got me mesmerized. How's Henrietta?
Oh, what am I going to tell you, Ethan?
Same thing as usual.
Yep. Not a trace of any physiological problem. Never is. Oh, there's a name for it if it's of any help. Chronic inadequate. Someone who just can't handle the simple process of life and has to make excuses for it.
I'd better go up to her.
Oh, there's no need. I gave her a sedative. Won't hurt her, but it might do you some good. Come on now. Let's play chess.
If I set us up out here, all right?
With all those clocks rattling away.
I want to keep my eye on this baby here.
If you can't sit up with one sick friend, you gotta sit up with another.
And for the next 10 or 15 minutes, I did forget the clock that was to haunt the rest of my days. Inexorably, as we concentrated on the chessboard, all of the clocks ticked on towards 12 o'clock. And the moment when the explanation of that substitute number 13 was about to be made by the clock itself. Don't think much of your king's pawn variation, Jake. Got you boxed in. Your move.
Don't rush me. Don't rush me. I'm thinking. Good Lord, Ethan. How can you stand that infernal racket?
Huh? What racket? Oh, you mean the clock striking? I don't even notice them anymore. Huh? Go ahead. What do you want to give up?
No. But who can think of a chess move with all hell breaking loose? From now on, we start our games after midnight. Enough to drive a man stark, staring mad. I swear to Sam Hill, Ethan, you deliver.
After the 12th stroke of the hourglass clock's chime, there was no sound but the beat of the clock and my own heart. Everything else had stopped dead. My friend's mouth was frozen in the act of speaking. His hand poised over a chessman as though cast in bronze. Outside, like the old child's game, people had turned to statues. A car backing into a parking space was stopped in its tracks. The very raindrops hung motionless in the air like a spangled curtain. For everyone else in the world, save only me and that damnable clock, time was standing still. The next hour was a strange delirium. My brain raced with new ideas for achieving my lifelong dream, a perpetual motion timepiece. My legs were as supple and tireless as an 18-year-old's as I climbed the stairs to look at my wife, frozen in the act of turning in her sleep. My sister-in-law caught in the middle of a snore. Towards the end of the hour, I returned to the shop. A quick stab of terror prodding at me. Was this to be forever? Poor Jake still sat in the middle of the move he had started almost an hour ago. The hands of all the clocks pointed to exactly 12, except the hourglass. There, the small hand stood directly at 13, while the minute hand swept closer and closer to join it. With a sense of mounting excitement, I waited for their junction. Like the other clocks, my strange new one had only struck 12 before. Now I felt I knew the reason for 13. The extra magic hour of precious time that twice a day it offered to its owner. With bated breath, I waited for the proof. The missing chime. And then it came.
Directly set us up here tonight to get me off my game. I concede.
Don't you want some more time to think it over?
Oh, it wouldn't matter if you gave me an hour to consider it. Tonight I'm too bushed to think. It's 1 minute after 12. We've only been at the game 10 minutes or so, and I feel as if I've been here for 70.
Is it really only 10 minutes?
You're the clockmaker, Ethan. Look all around you at your little markers.
Yes, you're right. So it's true.
You feeling all right?
Never better. Why?
You look a little strange for a minute. Matter of fact, Ethan, I've been meaning to mention it. I'd like to have you drop around to the office someday soon.
What for?
Well, you're not as young as you were, you know. And you've been pushing yourself pretty hard lately. Want to make a date now?
No, I'll call you.
No, don't forget.
No.
Now, there's something I wish all my patients were as healthy as.
Yeah, 20 years since I started that old avocado tree in the window.
And like Topsy, it just grew.
Don't you believe it? Oh, that took a lot of tender, loving care. Watered just right, pinching it back, bringing it along to grow up right. Just like the child. I love that old tree.
Well, listen, man's got to have something to love.
Yeah, I reckon. Oh, you don't think there's anything really wrong with Henny, do you?
No, I don't. Just another of her eternal spells. Well, night, old friend.
Rain, stop. Good night, Jake. For a long time after my old friend drove away, I stood by the door, gazing into the cool, crisp night. I didn't notice the cold. I was too full of a kind of welling excitement inside me. What a gift that clock had brought me. The dreams were building like castles in my head. Why, I was richer and more powerful than a king. Well, now I knew, no matter what, that for 2 blessed hours every day, from now on, I was a free man. And the last thing I heard that night, as my head hit the pillow, was the triumphant beat of the clock sounding in my inner ear. Or was it the sound of my own heart?
How is she, Doctor?
I don't know, Harriet. Now, I don't mean to alarm you, but I think we'll put your sister Henrietta in the hospital for a few days for observation.
Well, what's the matter with her?
Well, that's what I wanted to put her in the hospital for. Find out.
What do you suspect it is?
I don't suspect it's anything. I just want to reassure myself. Now, why don't you go up and keep her company while I talk to Ethan?
Oh, you won't have any trouble convincing him. I don't see why I can't take care of her.
Well, you can't this time, Harriet. If you want to help, go sit with her. I'll make the arrangements with Ethan.
How's Henny?
I want to put her in the hospital for a few days, Ethan.
Oh, she's that sick?
I'm not sure. Whatever it is, this is not just one of her spells. I want her under observation for a while.
Oh, whatever you say, Jake.
I wish I knew what to say. I feel a little guilty. Ever since that night a few weeks ago when we were playing chess.
What do you mean, guilty?
Well, damn it, for 20 years I've been medicating her imaginary ills. I wonder if maybe I got careless that night.
Huh?
Well, there's no doubt that from then on, this debility, anemia, whatever it is, started. Well, I'll get along and make all the arrangements. I'll phone you when to expect the ambulance.
I had my own guilt nagging at me. In the months since I'd discovered the secret of the clock, I'd thought of pretty nearly nothing else. I waited as eager as a child for those 2 stolen hours every day. Not only for the relief from Harriet's nagging and poor Henrietta's everlasting complaints, but for the lift, the joy, the youth and vigor that they brought me. For I'd gone one better than Ponce de Leon. For part of a day, anyway. I had found the fountain of youth. But a wave of shocks was about to jolt me back to reality. The first was Henny's being taken to the hospital. The second was the morning the clock stopped. Oh, no. No!
What is it?
No,
Ethan?
you can't stop.
What is it, Ethan? What's wrong?
The clock, it stopped.
Oh, is that
I've
all?
got to get it started.
You shake it like that, it'll end up in pieces. Good riddance. I told you it was a waste of money.
Get out of here.
How dare you talk to me like
get
that?
out!
Oh, I certainly will. Nobody's going to talk to me like that, particularly not you.
I was frantic. My golden hours of solitude gone. My extra gift of precious time and the rebirth of youth. I couldn't let them go. There must be some way to bring them back. Start that damned intricate mechanism again. Clock was dead. Its lifeblood somehow drained. Blood. But that's what started it in the first place. Maybe... Oh, damnation. I'll let it ring. I've got to find something to... Oh, all right. Hello?
Ethan, it's Jake.
Oh, Jake. Look, I don't want to talk now.
Oh, then you've heard.
Heard what?
About Henrietta?
Oh, she's not...
I just got back to my office and got a message from the hospital. I'm afraid she's passed away.
Oh, are you sure?
Well, I'm on my way to the hospital now, just on the outside chance. Better meet me there.
I'm on my way. We were too late. Henny was gone. With no goodbyes. I sat by a nurse's desk, waiting for Jake to complete arrangements and drive me home. A young nurse came down the hall with a tray of blood samples, putting them on the desk. She came towards me.
Mr. Vigil,
Yes, nurse?
Dr. Royce asked me to tell you he'll only be a minute or two.
Oh, thank you, nurse. As she walked away, my eyes following her blindly, then I was looking at that tray of blood samples. Blood. It was Henny's cutting her finger that started the clock. Would that be the answer? I acted without thinking. In a moment, I had slipped one of the tubes into my pocket. And I was back in my seat before Jake came striding down the hall. I was back in the shop at last, alone. With shaking fingers, I lifted the lid, exposing the brain or whatever it was of the clock. Uncapping the tube, I poured in the blood. I looked at the dial. The hands were spinning around to the proper time. And then the clock was alive again. Its heart was beating.
It would have been better, far better, had Ethan left it for dead. As we shall see when we return shortly with Act 3.
We knew we had a good thing going, but we're absolutely delighted that you know it, too. I'm Hy Brown, producer of Radio Mystery Theater, saying thank you. Thank you for those thousands of letters. Our prize drawing is over now, and I wish I could thank each of you personally. But here's the rub. So many of you ask questions about all sorts of things having to do with radio that sifting through the letters will take weeks. So here's a suggestion. If you need a quick reply, do write again, just the question this time, and we'll try to answer right away. Send it to Mystery Theater, Box 5152, Radio City Station, New York, 10019. That's Mystery Theater, Box 5152, Radio City Station, New York 10019. And again, thanks so very much for your fabulous encouragement.
This is WOR New York, your station for the Mystery Theater.
Hello, this is Joe Franklin. Ladies and gentlemen and boys and girls, for the very latest in nostalgia, for the ultimate in remembering, please join with me on Saturday nights from 9:05 to 11 o'clock, where memories are truly happening right here over WOR Radio. It is my privilege to present radio's original Memory Lane program, but positively the original. And whether it's Al Jolson or Benny Goodman or Louis Armstrong or Eddie Cantor or Harry James or the Dorseys, Mario Lanza, Gene Krupa, the young Frank Sinatra, George M. Cohan, Bing Crosby, Bogart, Lombard, Cagney, and all those happy times of radio's comedy and drama and soap opera. We have it fascinatingly, and all the sounds are reproduced crystal clear Saturday nights from 9:05 till 11 over WOR Radio. Yours truly, Joe Franklin, hosting Memory Lane. Tune in.
Which of us could resist the temptation of perpetual youth? Or short of that, any extension of life? 2 extra hours a day is 730 a year, almost exactly an extra month. In a lifetime, 6 whole more years. But what Ethan Vigil forgot is that for every action, there is a reaction. For every gift, a recompense.
The saddest part of my confession is that after my wife's death, I became completely blind to everything but my 2 periods of escape every day. More and more, my sister-in-law, Harriet, took over the ordinary part of life, transforming my beloved clock shop into a nightmare against which I preferred to close my eyes.
Ethan? Ethan?
What, Harriet?
Would you mind helping me dress this window, please?
Oh, what's the matter with it as it is?
If you just get away from that bench of yours for a moment and come here, perhaps I can show you.
All right, Harriet.
You know how I'm branching out now that I'm the active partner in the store.
Oh, Igor and Jim Cracks.
Well, you might know you'd lag a mile behind the times. This is novelty jewelry, and to sell it, we must display it.
Cheap claptrap.
Now, first off, I want you to get this cheap, silly rubber plant out of the window.
Rubber plant? That's my avocado tree that I grew with my own hands.
Well, whatever it is, it takes up the whole window. I want it out of here.
No, sir, not my tree. It needs the sunshine it gets.
But what use is it?
Does everything have to have a function? It's beautiful. It's balm to my soul. That's enough reason for its existence. Besides, it don't cost nothing, so you leave it alone.
Oh, very well. But I must have somewhere to display my costume jewelry. Oh, let's move that ugly old hourglass clock somewhere else. Why does it have to be right beside your bench where every customer comes...
Harriet, I'm warning you. You leave that clock where it is. Don't you ever dare lay a hand on it, you hear me?
My, aren't we touchy? Well, just let me remind you of something, Ethan. With Henrietta gone, her share goes to me. So I am 2/3 of this store. I can have it any way I want to.
Over my dead body. You can do what you want with all your cheap, tinselly stuff, but you keep your hands off that clock.
Heaven's sake, all right. Don't you have an appointment with Dr. Royce?
Oh, no, I forgot. I'll get right over to his office.
Okay, Ethan, you can put your shirt back on. I'm all finished examining you.
Oh, what's the verdict?
I couldn't be more pleased.
You approve of the shape I'm in, huh?
Well, before Henrietta died, I don't mind telling you, I was plumb worried about you.
Oh.
Your heart was acting up. I didn't like your blood pressure. And there was a lump in your belly I could palpate big as a grapefruit.
And now?
Now I don't even need the x-rays I took. Know it before I see him. It's practically noon. Now go on, you don't need a doctor. Get out of here. Let me get around to the sick people outside who do.
As I went into the outer office, I glanced at the electric clock on the wall. The hands clocked to noon as I did so. And I was looking at a, by now, familiar scene. The nurse who had risen to escort the next patient in was suddenly transfixed, halfway up from her chair. A child about to scream remained with face contorted, the scream not yet uttered. A thought crossed my mind. It was a month since I had fed the clock that first transfusion. I went into Jake's small lab, opened the refrigerator, I helped myself to a blood sample, and left. Back at the store, the only sound was the beat of my clock. It seemed a little labored to me, but for the moment I was too furious to see what Harriet had been at since I left. Draped all over my avocado tree were festoons of cheap tin and glass jewelry, and Harriet, the superior smirk on her face, was caught immobile in the act of adding more. I choked back my anger because suddenly, before I could move, the clock beat died.
Why, Ethan, how'd you get back so soon?
What are you doing to the avocado?
Well, since I can't take it out of the window, I thought I'd just use it as a display tree.
You leave that alone. As long as it's there, no one moves at it or touches it, except me. You understand that?
Well, you certainly don't have to be so abusive.
Get away. Get out of here. Leave me alone.
Oh, when you're in a mood like this, I'm glad to. I'm sorry to tell you that your precious clock seems to be out of order again. I hope this time it's broken for good.
Good riddance. Poor old tree. But first, some special oil for the magic lamp. Please, God, you'll still run again. And time stood still again. The pattern for the next months of my life was set. The part of it in my waking moments was only a necessary bridge between the long hours of infinite relief and accomplishment my clock brought me each noon and midnight. My designs for my perpetual motion mechanism were completed. I had already started to build it. That was my real life. Although I found to my dismay that the clock seemed to demand more and more frequent transfusions to stay running. But these were easy to steal from Jake's office in the hours when time stood still. Then once again, events caught up with me. Oh, Jake, in just a moment. What are you doing here this time of night?
Well, the evening's young. I thought a chess game might get some things off my mind. What were you frowning at in the window when I passed?
My plant there.
Avocado? Oh, yeah. Looks a mite peaked.
I can't understand it. It's been wilting and drooping day by day. No reason. Are you any good at diagnosing vegetable life, Jake?
Nope. I'm beginning to think I'm not much better with humans. I wish I knew the secret of your spurt of youth. Think I'm getting old.
You're not yourself, Jake. What's wrong?
I don't know. In a way, it goes back to Henrietta's death, or seems to.
What does?
Well, I never said too much about the way she died at the time, Ethan.
Congestive heart failure, you said?
Oh, that's true enough. That's a condition that produces an end to living. But what caused it?
Are you asking me?
No, I'm asking myself. And I have no answer. Oh, tests were run and the pathological evidence was clear enough. But in spite of massive transfusions, we couldn't stop Henrietta's blood from simply disintegrating. Quite literally turn into water.
And that's unusual.
Abnormal. Never seen a case like it before. In the last 3 months, I've lost 3 of my patients to the same sort of, what shall I say, same sort of malady. I might have seen it developing, except for a strange thing.
What?
Well, all of them had been to my office and had routine blood samples drawn for physical checkup.
And the samples didn't warn you?
There weren't any samples to examine. Unaccountably, they disappeared from my office. And one other strange coincidence. The night your wife died, a blood sample for a patient in the hospital disappeared.
And that patient died later?
Yep, about 4 weeks later. But I don't know why I'm worrying you with all this. It's none of your business.
But it is.
Huh? Oh, you mean as far as Henrietta is concerned?
No, I mean much more than that.
Ethan, what is it? I didn't mean to upset you like this.
I'm not upset. I just want you to understand.
Understand what?
That I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Well, you're a good friend, Ethan. And I guess I don't feel like any chess tonight now. I'll run along.
Jake,
Yeah?
I never asked before, but do you remember exactly what time Henny died?
Oh, about 25 to 12, I think.
I didn't have to think. But I knew it all now. That was the precise moment that evil clock first stopped. So it was a monster, insatiable, that once having tasted blood, continued to suck on its victim till it had drained all life away. And I was no better, no less evil. I had been feeding this mechanical vampire at the cost of other human lives. In a daze, unable to explain to him, I saw my old friend Jake out and turned to face what I had to face. The shop was dark as I walked to the clock. My ears were so attuned to it by now that I'd been aware that it had started to labor and needed a fresh transfusion. I was more than a little mad by now, as in the dark I said to it, "Die! Damn you, you devil! Die!" My moment of triumph was brief. I still had my own expiation to make. Not only for my wife, but for all those others. And there was a personal sadness as my hands in the darkness traced the form of my perpetual motion machine, which would never be completed now. A man without love, wife, or children would like to leave a small footprint on the sands, his gauge to immortality. All I would leave now was a sick avocado tree I had nourished for 20 years for nothing. And then suddenly, I heard stealthy footsteps and pulled back into the shadows. Harry.
Oh, I thought you'd gone to bed.
What are you doing to the plant?
Oh, why, it's just some food to make
Let me see. It's a weed killer. You've been poisoning my tree. Why, you...
Don't you touch me.
Get away from me. Get away.
Look what you've done. I've cut my hand. It's your fault. But finally you've smashed up this ugly old clock for good. It's dead. Just as dead as your precious avocado tree is going to be. And don't think you can save it. I knew you'd never agree to take it out of the window, so I've been poisoning it for weeks. It's as good as dead right now.
And so were you, Harriet. So were you. Her blood had started the damn thing again. But this was to be the last time. What is there left to say? I have to watch another human being die. Slowly, inexorably, unable to arrest the inevitable. And even though it is someone I despise, my guilt is in no way lessened. The only pleasure I can take is that as Harriet sinks, so does that remorseless, evil, damnable machine. And once its heart is stilled, I shall destroy it forever. The one element I have not tried against it is the enemy of the devil. I shall take it, chained to my body, when we go to our grave in the river, to share it for eternity. As I finish this confession, to mail to my good friend, Dr. Jacob Royce, I can hear the evil thing labor, about to die. It's time for me to write the end.
So be warned. If you should by any chance come across a clock in a curio shop shaped like an hourglass with a dial that bears the number 13 instead of 12, shun it like the plague. I'll be back shortly.
Hello, mystery fans. This is the Creeping Claw. Yes, this is the Claw, and I'm coming your way. I'm coming your way, and I'm gonna get you.
Oh, I'd love to play the lead in one of those mysteries. This is Gene Shepard, gang, and I'm here to tell you that there's been a great time change here on WOR, and from here on in, I'm going to be heard every night. There's been all kinds of phone calls about it, so here's the answer. Every night at 9:15, Monday through Friday. Gene Shepard, better known as the Creeping Claw.
Good evening. I'm Patricia McCann. Dora McCann and I hope to have the pleasure of your company this week from 11:15 a.m. to 12, Monday through Friday. And let me tell you what we've got planned. Food prices have gone up again, so tomorrow we'll talk good, cheap food and how to make it taste. Then Tuesday, the day we've set aside for our ongoing nutrition series, our guest will be Diane Buckman, and she'll tell you how to use herbs to make everything from your own cosmetics and perfume to a natural tranquilizer. Then on Wednesday, we're going to get tough. Our guest will be Ralph Charles, a lawyer, a consumer, and a complainer, and he wants to tell us all how to get satisfaction from Ma Bell, Con Ed, and the local TV repairman. Thursday, Dora McCann interviews a lady who does a lot of ad-libbing in the kitchen, who doesn't think you should be uptight about a lot of the old rules and regulations. Her name is Glenn Andrews. She's author of Impromptu Cooking. And then last but not least, on Friday, you'll hear Muhammad Salam, who'll talk about his Middle Eastern restaurant, the Tripoli restaurant here in New York, one of the best. Have we got a date? Monday through Friday, the McCann program right here on WOR.
Oh, the fascination of time and man's never-ending quest to hoard it, to stretch it, to borrow an extra portion for himself alone. As I sit watching the clock ticking away, I, too, have that irrational impulse all of us have felt sometime to hold back the hands and bring time itself to stop. And then I remember Ethan Vigil, and I decide that once around is enough for all of us. Our cast included John Beal, Grace Matthews, Bryna Rayburn, and Ian Martin. The entire production was under the direction of Hyman Brown. And now, a preview of our next tale.
Deeply, hopelessly, irrevocably in love.
Now, my boy, I've been a publisher a long time. I've talked to dozens of authors. They all fall in love with characters they've created. It happens all the time. She didn't exist before you created her, did she?
She exists now.
Good heavens, man. She came out of your mind. She has no life except the one you gave her.
Maybe she did come out of my mind, but now she's got a life of her own.
Well, in a manner of speaking, of course she has. And I want to prolong that life, Stephen. I predict great success for Clarissa. And for you. You and Clarissa are one, you might say.
No, we are not one. We must never be one. I want her dead.
This is E.G. Marshall inviting you to return to our Mystery Theater for another adventure in the macabre. Until next time, pleasant dreams.
The WOR Mystery Theater was brought to you by ShopRite Supermarkets, where you get a lot more for a little less, and by Suburban Savings, with offices throughout North Jersey. The preceding Mystery Theater program was furnished by the CBS Radio Network.
John Wingate here. You have a problem? Money, stocks, medical, or whatever. Then join me, weeknights at 10 p.m., for the Wingate News Digest. News is simpler than you think. It's what affects you, your pocketbook, your job, your pension, all those things. These we cover, plus all hard news. The Wingate News Digest, weeknights at 10.
Be sure you join us again tomorrow for the Mystery Theater, right after the Foot and Lewis News Commentary, Monday through Friday, here on WOR.
The Price of Fear. Vincent Price presents Michael Jaston, Sandra Clark, and Daphne Hurd in Goody Two-Shoes by William Ingram. Vincent Price.
Hello and welcome. The story I'm about to tell you is a love story. If not of perfect love, at least the perfecting of it. Something difficult to achieve. Something which can often lead to disastrous, indeed horrific results. David and Anne Fordyce, Mr. and Mrs., both mid-30s. They'd been married for 5 years, known each other for 10. They were, well, what you might say, meant for each other. Everybody said so. Attractive, personable, identical tastes, interests, meant. And yet, a feeling of growing apart was the way David eventually put it. The reason for this growing apart neither knew or even understood. Both finally blamed it quite simply on the rat race. They thought about it a lot. It preoccupied them, a need to get away out of the rut, a chance to find themselves and each other again. And they both believed it, really believed it. Once decided, the move wasn't difficult to arrange. David's credentials as a junior partner in one of the city's most reputable law practices, a fine mind, excellent connections, it was all there just for the asking. Their best friends, Charles and Victoria, said so at the time. They even said so after my little story was told. But at the time, there was no sense of sacrifice, of giving up anything. Anne was, quite simply, the most important thing in David's life. So fresh fields and pastures knew it had to be. The city chambers lost him to a small country practice. Their stylish Georgian terrace house in London to a temporary flat above the office in that distant market town in deepest Devonshire. And it was from there, every weekend, they'd drive deeper, ever deeper, into the surrounding countryside, in search of, well, at the time they'd both have found it impossible to put a name to that.
It was late evening when we got that first glimpse of Tithe Cottage. Just a glimpse at first. Briefly, between the hedges and high elms. Only the roof, really. Torn thatch. No smoke rising from the lopsided old chimney. It was neglected, but strangely beckoning.
Darling,
Hold on. Have a heart. You need a flamethrower to get rid of these brambles.
Oh, it gets better once you find the path.
It certainly couldn't get worse.
What?
Whoever it belongs to, he's certainly no gardening enthusiast.
Oh, do stop moaning, darling. Oh, damn.
What?
I've got myself all caught up in these brambles.
Now who's moaning?
Well, give me a hand, then.
You do realize we're trespassing.
Whatever happened to your spirit of adventure?
I left it at the gate.
Oh, come on, then. Come on. You finally made it, then.
I'm not altogether sure. What can you see?
Only that the windows need cleaning.
Obviously hasn't been lived in for ages.
And ages.
Now what the devil do you think you're up to?
Oh, breaking and entering.
But you can't
Oh,
just...
it's bolted as well as locked.
Ah, well, that's put paid.
I'm not beaten yet.
Now where are you off to?
Round the back. Oh, come on. Don't be chicken. Might as well go the whole hog.
Famous last words.
Anybody at home?
And if there were, I'd like to hear you talk yourself out of it.
Hello?
God, what a shambles.
It's not exactly house and gardens.
I'm whacked.
There's a three-legged chair if you want a breather.
Now where?
Oh, the living room is huge.
I'll take your word for it.
Oh, open hearth, ingle nook, a twisting little staircase. It's not very safe, but going right up to the bedrooms.
Reluctantly, I have to take your word for that, too. Anne, love. Anne? Darling? Now what are you pondering?
Only the possibilities.
Come on, Anne, I'm starved, and it doesn't look as though we're going to get invited to dinner. What possibilities?
Oh, only possibilities.
Oh, darling, you must be joking. But for God's sake, it looks as though a bomb hit it.
Possibilities was what I said.
There aren't any. Use your head. The roof leaks.
But can be rethatched.
That staircase.
Will obviously need a bit of fixing.
But it's a positive slum.
Soap, water and elbow grease, me old dearie.
Anne.
You're not mad about the idea, are you? No, you're obviously not. Well, you're quite right. It's getting late.
Oh, to hell with that.
It's just that I thought getting away from it all was part of the general idea.
We'd as good as settled for something on that new estate.
Estate? Oh, yes, there's always that. But who the hell wants to live in a boot box when there's the challenge of something like this?
Challenge is right.
Please. Oh, please, David.
It might not even be on the market.
It might, though. What? At least think about it, please. Please.
Idiot. All right, I'll think about it. But for God's sake, don't set your heart on it.
I already have.
Anne needn't have worried. Tithe Cottage was on the market. It had been for a very long time. And at the price, even David found it impossible to resist. They spent their first night there on a borrowed and very uncomfortable pair of camp beds. Anne slept like a top. David, hardly at all. Breakfast was served amidst the debris of the old cottage scullery.
And just as I was dropping off, those damn birds started their manic twitterings. Piccadilly in the rush hour I can take, but those damn birds...
Oh, not to worry, darling. You'll get used to it.
Have to, won't I? God, look at the time. I must be off. Though I feel pretty rotten leaving you with this little lot. I suppose I could ring and tell...
Oh, could nothing. I shall enjoy it.
What's on the agenda?
Soap, water and elbow grease. Oh, can't do much else till the furniture gets here.
Well, they did promise midday, latest.
Yeah, so we all know what that means. Anyway, I've arranged for a Mrs. Perkins from the village to come in and give me a hand.
Mrs. Perkins? How rural.
Ain't it just though?
Now, what about lunch and dinner?
Oh, I'll pop in and do a shop once I've got things organised. Oh, don't worry, darling. When you get home, you won't know the old place.
Somehow, I think I might.
And what happened? From the start, nothing but hitches. By midday, no furniture van and no reliable Mrs. Perkins. Anne decided to cut her losses. She left a note explaining her absence and set off across the fields to the village and the small general store. At least David wouldn't have an empty larder to add to the list of discomforts. It was early afternoon by the time she got back to the cottage, and the surprise that awaited her. Not only had the furniture been delivered, but Mrs. P. had already got things very much in hand in the living room. The carpet down, the three-piece suite arranged very much as she would have chosen. Perhaps most surprising of all, David's law books, arranged on the shelves alphabetically, strictly according to author, just the way he would have insisted. And upstairs in the bedroom, her dressing table was just in the place that she would have chosen.
Well, well, well. Clever old Mrs. Perkins.
It wasn't until an hour or so later, when that clever lady called up to her from the bottom of the stairs, that she realized that something was amiss.
Hello? Anybody home? Mrs. Fordyce?
Yes?
Oh, you up there then?
Is that you, Mrs. Perkins? Hey, with you in a second. Oh, that should do it. Hello, Mrs. Perkins. Talk about the morass of centuries,
That's how you right, Mum.
Oh, you find it getting chilly? Just give me a hand to pull this tea chest in a bit, and we can slam the door on it. Oh, there. Oh, that's better.
That's a lovely old clock there, Mum.
Yes, my husband will have to rebalance it. Come on through to the living room. Would you like some tea?
No, thank you, Mum.
It's no trouble. I haven't mastered that stove, but we scrounged up a primus, so...
No, really, thank you, Mum.
Oh, well, later then. Is something the matter, Mrs. Perkins?
I just come to say how sorry I am, I have.
Sorry?
Well, Jack, that's my husband. He says no need. No need to go apologising for something that's not really of your making, he says. No right to go making arrangements about coming here to help out and all without talking the matter over with me first, he says. But like I says, far as that poor woman's concerned, all water under the bridge. None of it her doing. Well, her not to know, I says. Least I can do is to get up there now and say how sorry I am, Mum, for not being able to get here at all, Mum.
Not able to get here at all? Mrs. Perkins, you did say...
Summon up, then.
Up? No, it's just that I had to go into the village for a few things, and I left you a note, but if you've just got here, you won't know about the note.
No, Mum.
Anyway, it all took rather longer than I expected. Down in the village, I mean. But when I got back, most of the furniture neatly stacked in the front garden, and this room arranged, just as you see it now. I just took it for granted it was your doing, you see, that you'd made a start, and, well, for some reason had to pop out again.
Oh, my dear Lord.
Mrs. Perkins?
My dear Lord.
Oh, look, are you all right? Here, sit down for a minute. There should be some brandy.
No, I'm all right in a minute, Mum. So, started already, has she?
She?
I might have known. Should have expected it in view of what's gone afore. But it being such a long time now since the last couple move out. Always townies. 1 foot inside the door and it's love at first sight. But no sooner settled than moving on again. And all is of a sudden, like.
Didn't they give a reason?
Us locals never got that close. None of our business, was it? So what call us to ask the whys and wherefores?
Just a moment ago you said, started again, has she?
Did I, Mum?
She. You did say she.
2 shoes.
I'm sorry?
Goody 2 shoes. You can smile. Just a name for her, good as any other. Nursery rhyme name. No telling for why they first give it to her. But when I were a little maid, I used to listen to the old ones talking in the village and telling the tale and smile. Just smile.
Tell me about her, Mrs. Perkins. Well, the right to know.
The right to know. Well, abandoned on her wedding day at the church, according to hearsay. Oh, nothing so much thought in these days, but in Goody's time. Well, even now, possible to imagine the snidings and the whys and wherefores on every tongue. This cottage is all ready and prepared, seemingly, so 'tis here she comes, and stays, and never ventures, swearing never to be seen again by another living soul. Out by night and in by day was what they reckoned, but not even the night poachers and the light ever caught a glimpse of her from wedding day on. Long dead when they finally notices no smoke from her chimney, nettles as high as her rooftop. Long, long dead, so no face to be put to her, even in death. But seems grave all arranged and paid for, even something in her own hand wrote for her stone.
Accept the gifts I offer. Accept them, come what may. But see but once their giver, and live to rue the day.
How did you know that, Mum?
I don't know.
But you've never even seen the grave, have you?
No, I haven't. Mrs. Perkins.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mum. I must leave you now.
Oh, but please.
No, must.
Mrs. Perkins, please.
Must, I tell you, must.
And as Anne turned back into the passageway, something different. The tea chest had gone. It now stood on the landing at the top of the stairs. The bedding it had contained was already neatly stacked in what she'd only just decided should be her linen cupboard. Even before she'd opened the door, she knew it would be there. Sheets, blankets, all freshly laundered and aired, and from them the just-remembered fragrance of lavender, dried and secured in sachets of old-fashioned cambric, tied with the palest of pink ribbons. It didn't really worry her. She'd already decided not to tell any of it to David. And then, several weeks later...
Happy?
Need you ask? It's just as...
Well?
As I always imagined it might be. More, much more.
Didn't I always tell you? The place had possibilities.
I just hope you're not overdoing things, that's all.
I've loved every minute of it. Wait, it's almost as though...
Well?
As though we owed it something. Which is why we came here. Meant. And now it's loving us back in return.
Idiot. Dear idiot.
I'll just take these coffee things through.
Is the woman from the village still coming in to give you a hand?
No, not anymore, darling.
Oh?
Well, her husband was taken ill. Quite suddenly. She says she can't manage it anymore.
When did she drop that on you?
Oh, just recently.
How recently?
A week or so back.
Then you'll have to look around for somebody else.
No, we don't need anybody else.
But...
We don't, do you hear me? We don't, darling. Really, we don't.
She didn't, of course. If there had been any initial terror, it had long passed. She'd grown to depend on her good fairy, to take her for granted. It no longer even surprised her to leave the kitchen, to return a few minutes later and find the dishes washed and stacked away, to find a fresh supply of logs in the polished hearth, freshly baked bread and cakes when she entered the pantry. If there was any motive in her continued silence, one had to look no further than David's praise of her. And yet, as the months passed, she felt the need of a wider, less captive audience. Their old friends, Charles and Victoria, proved the obvious answer.
When we got your invitation, Vicky and I had an each-way bet.
No such thing.
Don't fib, my love.
Do tell, then.
Take my word for it, she said. Either they've decided to throw in the rural sponge, or...
Or?
Yeah, oh, poor David's gone over the orchard wall on his own and is beseeching us to get the spare bedroom ready.
I'll kill him.
Not that far from the truth.
Oh, do tell.
Oh, come on, darling. Don't mind admitting it.
But you already have done.
Joel, I agreed with the getting away from it all and to hell with the rat race bit, but I wasn't too keen on ending up as Wurzel Gummidge, while better half put on the old mop cap and got on with the jam making out back.
We did have our doubts.
If you'd seen this place when we first set foot through the door, they'd have been more than justified.
Bad as that, old son?
Worse. I still thank God for a telephone in the village and a hotel within striking distance, just in case.
You see how it's all come out? Oh, ye of little faith.
I'll take your word for it, old son. God, looking at the condition it's in now...
It's just about 6 months, isn't it?
Just about.
Positive miracle.
Yes. Yes, I suppose it must seem like a bit of a miracle.
You all right, darling?
Fine. Everything's fine. I just felt a bit stuffy in here for a moment, that's all. Charles, Victoria, can I get you anything else?
Oh, not another crumb for me, darling. You've sentenced me to a 6-month fast as it is.
Some blowout, eh, old girl?
Oh, superb.
Especially that country pie of yours. You know, I can't remember ever having sampled it before.
That would be damn surprising if you had.
Oh?
Mrs. Beaton, did you say, darling?
Oh, previous to that, kind sir. Ever so much previous to that.
Go on.
Well, can we share the dark secrets?
But 'tis no dark secret, mum. 'Tis common in these parts. Partridge, wood-pigeon, lark, sweet Jenny Wren, if you've a mind to her, cider-soaked truffles, dill, peppercorn, fennel, and butter marjoram that have stood 1 year around.
First catch your lark, eh?
I wonder if we can order it from our local takeaway.
Anne came across an old recipe book when she was clearing out the attic.
Receipt, my sweet dear. Receipt.
God knows how long it had lurked there. Handwritten.
Oh, fascinating.
Crabbed like you'd never believe.
Crabbed, you say?
Well, it seemed easy enough for you. Anyway, before you could say Mrs. Beaton's grandmother, we've resurrected the old herb garden, flirted with the local gamekeeper, and I've been playing your 18th century guinea pig ever since.
You're not finding a fault, my sweet dear.
Oh, far from it.
Shall I give you a hand with those?
You stay out of there. You hear me? You hear well what I'm a-telling you. 'Tis my place, mind, no others. No damn cause for her to go a-meddling in. You hear me?
Anne.
Oh.
Darling.
Your faces, though.
It happened several months later. Summer had gone. Autumn was in the trees. Anne had started out to the village when she remembered her shopping list on the kitchen table. As she passed the half-drawn curtains of the living room windows, she caught her first glimpse of her.
Small. Very small. Much older than I... Oh, how very old she looks. Not at all frightening, though. Such white hair, pulled neatly into a tight bun at her neck. Made to seem even whiter, I suppose, by her long black dress, reaching right to the ground. From any age. And yet, if I stretch just a little higher over the sill, I can just about see the stone floor.
And on tiptoe, peering over the window ledge, Anne saw, peeping out from under the hem of the long dress, a pair of black kid shoes, polished to brilliance. On their front, 2 very large, silver, shiny buckles. Then Anne looked up. For just the briefest of moments, their eyes met. Then the old lady was gone.
Accept the gifts I offer. Accept them, come what may. But see but once their giver, and live to rue the day.
for God's sake, darling, haven't you made a move yet? Here.
Oh, thanks.
Have to be a beaker, I'm afraid. Come to that, about the only clean crock in the house.
What?
And why the hell didn't you let me give you a hand with the dinner things?
Dinner things.
Your gourmet specialities certainly go through one hell of a lot of pots and pans. It's ruddy chaos down there.
But I did...
What?
No, nothing. They won't take me long.
Well, it's all up to you, I'm afraid. Overslept as it is. But the way things are going lately, it'd be a damn sight better if we cleared the decks before we turned in. On top of which, that damn cat must have knocked the sugar bowl over. It's all over the ruddy place. The fire won't catch because the sticks are damp and it rained in the night. So one of us seems to have left the living room window off the catch. The curtains, carpet, and one of the armchairs are sodden. Oh, hell, love. I don't even have a clean shirt.
It was that first morning Anne began to realize things were not as they had been, that something was amiss. Much as she tried, the shambles continued. The more she tried, the worse it got. Untidiness became chaos. Chaos turned to filth. She tried, but could do nothing to prevent it.
Nothing, my dear, darling David. Nothing in the world. Simply too much. Out of my hands, you see? You see?
But why, love? Why?
The change.
There must be some reason.
Beyond reason, my old dearie.
All right. Perhaps I shouldn't have depended on you so much. Taking things for granted. If that's why... If it's something that can be put right... Don't laugh at me, damn you! Give me that! Don't laugh! Please don't.
Poor dear David. Oh, poor David. It's all my doing. I should have told you before. Confided in you. But you've suddenly grown so proud of me. Too proud, you see? I've grown to depend on it. She must have realized that. Counted on that. What she'd had in store right from that very first day. Right from the very first moment we walked through those doors. All those long years before. Just waiting for us.
Who, my love?
Her.
But I don't understand.
No. No, you could never understand. Too late to understand. Oh, hold me closer. Oh, please hold me. I saw her, you see. Just that once. But I should never have done that. It was the briefest glimpse. But I should never have caught her. She hated me for that.
That evening, even as David walked up the path, he sensed a change in the place. The smoke curling up from the chimney, the brass knocker again worked to a brilliant shine, just as he'd remembered it.
Anne? Anne? Anne, you up there?
It was in the kitchen he found her, dear Anne. She was wearing her favorite dress. She was smiling at him, so tender and sweet a smile, as she swung gently back and forth from the heavy oak beam. There was one other detail David took in that first horrendous moment. The chair she must have climbed on and then jumped from was back in its usual place, below the recently polished window. And then beneath the chair, something as incongruous as it was bewildering. A pair of shoes, of the old-fashioned kind. Much too small for Anne, tiny. Low-heeled, kid leather, polished to brilliance. And in the front, 2 heavy, silver, shiny buckles. And reflecting in their shine, the swinging corpse. David married again. Charles and Victoria considered it a very unlikely choice. The new Mrs. Fordyce was quite the opposite of Anne, sophisticated, poised, almost glossy. She ran her own advertising agency, far too well for her male competitors. On the domestic front, and only in a crisis, she could just about manage to top up a coffee percolator. Thatched cottages gave her hay fever. And yet the match seemed to work well enough. David probably prefers it this way.
That was Goody Two-Shoes, starring Michael Jaston as David Fordyce, Sandra Clark, Anne, and Daphne Hurd, Mrs. Perkins, with Frances Jeter, Victoria, and Nigel Graham, Charles. The Price of Fear was presented by Vincent Price, written by William Ingram, and directed by John Dias.
Prayer to ward off evil spirits, you remember, from ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties and things that go bump in the night. Well, isn't it strange how the coming of night can alter the whole shape, appearance, even the atmosphere of a house or a room? Sounds are different at night, too. Anyway, reading that old incantation, I was reminded of the tragic case of Raymond Hewson. It's an odd story which I've called the waxwork, so let me tell you about it. Some years ago, I was working on a film in London. One evening, after we'd finished, I decided to take advantage of a little free time before a dinner engagement and to walk back to my hotel, exploring London as I did so. I'd been walking for about an hour when I came across an inviting-looking pub in an alley just off Baker Street. I went in and ordered a glass of beer and a sandwich. No sooner had I got my drink, enjoying the early evening atmosphere of the place, than I was surprised to hear someone calling my name.
Vincent! I say, Vincent!
Oh, good Lord, Raymond Hewson. I haven't seen you for years.
Yeah, that's right. Not since, not since I did those extra bits of dialogue for that film.
Yeah.
What was it called?
Oh, dear.
The Thing Without a Thing, or some such name. Well, I must say it really is the most amazing coincidence running into you tonight of all nights. In fact, in a way, you might say it's providential.
Raymond was a spare, pale man with lank brown hair, and although he spoke plausibly, even forcibly, he had the defensive and somewhat furtive air of a man used to being snubbed. He looked, in fact, exactly what he was, a man gifted somewhat above the ordinary, who was a failure through his own lack of self-assertion. He made a living as a freelance writer, and like most freelance writers, he was always hard up. Indeed, when he spoke of our meeting as being providential, I half expected that he was leading up to asking for a small loan. But that night, Raymond had other things on his mind.
You see, I've arranged to spend tonight, all night, in the Chamber of Horrors at the waxworks round the corner. I'm hoping to write a piece about it and, get it published. Now, if I could work one or two observations from you into the story, it'd be a great selling point. Do you mind?
Oh, no, not at all.
Look, Vincent, I know you're very busy, but I wonder if you'd mind doing me a favor.
Oh, anything, my dear chap, within reason.
Well, all I want you to do is come with me to the waxworks and see me settled in. No, it won't take very long. It's only a few minutes' walk.
Well, I do have a little time to spare, and I must confess that I find the idea rather interesting.
Oh, good for you. Well, now, look here. Let me buy you a drink, and then we'll go round to the waxworks. Now, I have an appointment with the director, Miss Frayne, at 7:30, so we've just got time.
You must realize, Mr. Hewson, that there's nothing new in your request. In fact, we have to refuse it to different people at least 3 times a week.
What kind of people, I wonder, would want to spend all night alone in a waxworks?
Oh, mostly foolish young men who've made bets or who are trying to prove something to themselves.
Do you always refuse?
We do, I'm afraid. You see, if some young idiot were to lose his senses, we should find ourselves in a most embarrassing position. Of course, in this case, your being a writer, Mr. Hewson, somewhat alters the situation.
I suppose you mean that writers have no senses to lose.
Oh, no. But one imagines them to be responsible people.
You can't know many writers, Miss Frayne.
And, of course, in your case, we have something to gain. Publicity.
Publicity? Yes, well, that brings me to another point.
I think I know what's coming. Well, I have, in fact, already been in touch with our advertising manager, and he has agreed that in the event of your article being published in one of the national dailies, you will receive some payment from us.
Raymond, how do you intend to treat the story?
Well, to make it gruesome, of course. Well, gruesome, but with just a saving touch of humour. But I don't have to tell you anything about presenting horror with humour, Vincent.
Well, perhaps not. I think I get the general idea.
Well, Mr. Hewson, I wish you good luck with the story. But first, I must warn you that it is no small ordeal that you're about to attempt. And I confess that it's not something I should like to do.
May I ask why?
So difficult to explain. But I'll tell you what. Come along now and see for yourselves. But I warn you, Mr. Hewson, that if you are at all susceptible to atmosphere, you are in for a most uncomfortable night.
Oh, that's all right. Newspaper editors never stop telling me I've no imagination whatsoever.
Although Raymond appeared to take the whole affair lightly, I knew him well enough to realize that he was not looking forward to the ordeal. He was obviously down on his luck, and I rather think he saw the whole thing as a last desperate gamble. These thoughts crossed my mind as we followed Miss Frayne through 6 rooms where attendants were busy shrouding the kings and queens of England and those others whose fame or notoriety had rendered them eligible for this kind of immortality.
I've asked the porter to make you as comfortable as possible, but don't expect too much. I've also given instructions for the figures downstairs to remain uncovered. Through here, gentlemen, please. Oh, before I forget, I must ask you not to smoke. We had a fire scare here this afternoon. I don't know who raised the alarm, but whoever it was, it proved to be a false one. Mind your heads as we go downstairs.
Miss Frayne led the way down an ill-lit stone stairway, which conveyed the sinister impression of giving access to a dungeon. On reaching the bottom, we passed along a small passage in which were displayed a few preliminary horrors, such as relics of the Spanish Inquisition and a pair of early English stocks. In turn, this corridor opened into a dimly lit room with a vaulted roof. It was, by design, an eerie and uncomfortable chamber, the very atmosphere of which invited its visitors to speak in whispers. The waxworks figures stood on low pedestals with numbered tickets at their feet. Seeing them elsewhere without knowing whom they represented, one would have thought them a dull, even a shabby-looking collection. But gathered together in that sinister room. Ooh.
Well, here we are, gentlemen. Recent notoriety is rubbing shoulders with all the old favourites. Perhaps you recognise one or two of them. This, of course, is the famous Dr. Crippen. Insignificant little fellow, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Over there is Wilkinson, the Strangler. And there you see a tableau depicting the murder of the two little princes in the Tower of London.
It's a very dark Tower of London.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry that I can't give you any more light, but that's all there is. For obvious reasons, we keep this place as murky as possible.
Good Lord. Who's that over there?
Ah, yes, I was coming to him. That's one of our star turns. A present-day murderer who has never paid the price for his crimes.
The figure which Hewson had indicated was that of a small, slight man, not much more than 5 feet in height. It wore waxed mustaches, spectacles, and a voluminous cape. There was something so exaggeratedly French in its appearance that it reminded me of a stage caricature, something out of one of those delightful bedroom farces by Feydeau. I could not say precisely why that mild-looking face seemed so repellent, but I found myself instinctively taking a step backwards.
Nasty-looking character, isn't he? Who is it?
That is Dr. Baudet.
Baudet. I've heard that name recently, Baudet. I can't remember in what connection.
You'd remember better if you were a Frenchman. For a long time, he was the terror of Paris. He carried on his work of healing by day and of throat-cutting by night.
Oh, yes, I remember now. Wasn't it said that he killed people for the sheer devilish pleasure it gave him, and always with a razor?
That's right. After his last crime, he left behind a clue which set the police on his trail. In fact, they soon amassed enough evidence to send him to the madhouse, or the guillotine, on a dozen capital charges.
But I thought you said...
That he was never caught. Oh, he was caught, all right, and tried and convicted. But somehow he managed to escape and cheated the guillotine. 1 or 2 crimes of a similar nature have taken place in London quite recently. But then it's queer, isn't it, how every notorious murderer has imitators. Anyway, most of the experts believe that he is quite definitely dead.
Well, I don't like him at all. Oh, those eyes. Phew. They seem to bite into you.
Yes, don't they? This figure's a little masterpiece. It's excellent realism, really, for Baudet practiced hypnotism and was supposed to mesmerize his victims before dispatching them.
Oh, I see. I was wondering how so small a man could have managed to overcome his victims.
Well, it was mesmerism. At least there was never any sign of a struggle.
Do you know, I thought I saw him move.
Oh, come on now, Raymond.
No, he moved, I tell you.
Oh.
You'll have more than one optical illusion before the night's out, I expect, Mr. Hewson. But remember, you won't be locked in. You can come upstairs whenever you've had enough of it. There are watchmen on the premises, so don't be surprised if you hear them moving. I've told them you're here, by the way.
Raymond, you quite sure you want to go through with this?
Of course. And I think it very mean of you not to have offered to stay with me.
Oh, that wouldn't be fair, Mr. Hewson. You must be quite alone.
Well, don't think I won't mention you in my story, Vincent. Though I may as well tell you that I shall feature heavily as the hero.
Raymond, I assure you that even if I didn't already have a dinner engagement, I should still be only too happy to let you stay here all night by yourself. This place gives me the creeps.
Well, Mr. Hewson, I'll wish you a very good night.
And so do I, Raymond. A very good night and a successful story to celebrate tomorrow. Why don't you give me a ring, I'm at Jameson's Hotel in the Strand.
Thanks, I'll do that. Well, good night.
Good night, Mr. Hewson.
And thanks for tucking me in.
And so we left him, and after a quick and I must confess welcome drink in Miss Frayn's office, I went back to my hotel to get changed for dinner. It must have been at about 3 o'clock the next morning that I received an urgent telephone call from Miss Frayn asking me to return to the waxworks immediately.
And this is how our night watchman found him. He thought he heard somebody scream and came down here to investigate, and immediately rang me at my flat. And I'm afraid that when I found what had happened, I rather, panicked and rang you. You see, I didn't know what else to do. I didn't have his home number or anything.
I understand. Have you notified the police? It's usual, you know, in cases of sudden death.
I did think of it, sir, but I thought it better to ring Miss Frayn first. I could see at once it was too late to call a doctor.
I'm afraid I didn't think too clearly. Oh, how awful. This is the sort of thing we've always tried to avoid. What will the directors say?
Well, there's time enough to let them know later. Have you any idea of how it could have happened?
Not at all, sir. I just heard this scream, and came running.
I noticed Raymond's notebook lying on the floor by the tape recorder, which had run out. I began idly turning over the pages, and what follows is my own interpretation of what happened from the time Miss Frayne and I had left him on that fatal evening. Why don't you give me a ring, I'm at Jameson's Hotel in the Strand.
Oh, thanks. Yes, I'll do that. Well, good night.
Good night, Mr. Hewson.
And thanks for tucking me in. Right, now let's get organized. Now, let me see. Notebooks, pencils, tape recorder. It's in working order. Flask, yes, mustn't forget that. Oh, God, it's cold down here. I wish I brought a blanket. Now, rough notes first and then record. Yeah, she'll get a nice, creepy, atmospheric piece. Might even flog it to the BBC. Right. The dim, unvarying light fell on the rows of figures, which were so uncannily like human beings. The air in the chamber was stagnant as the water at the bottom of a standing pond. Good God, what's that?
Oh, good evening, sir. Startled you, did I? I'm very sorry. Miss Frayne asked me to bring down this chair for you. She thought it might be more comfortable than the one you've got, sir.
Oh, God, you made me jump.
Yes, it does get you like that down here, sir. Creepy, that's what it is, sir. Creepy. Now, sir, where would you like this chair? Over here by Dr. Baudet?
No, not there. No, just leave it over there in the gangway. I'll put it where I want it later.
Oh, very good, sir. Will this do?
Yes, thank you.
Well, sir, I'll wish you a good night. I'll be upstairs if you want me. Oh, and by the way, sir, don't let any of them sneak up behind you, sir, and touch you with their clammy hands. Good night, sir.
Stupid old fool nearly gave me a heart attack. Now, where to put this damn chair? By the little Frenchman. God, how those eyes dig into one. No, I know. I'll sit here with my back to him. Then I won't have to look at his face. Why not? I'm not afraid of him. Or am I? Come on, Hewson. Come on, old son. Your nerves have started playing tricks already. He's only a waxwork. They're all only waxworks. What was that? Something moved. Oh, come on, this won't do. Now, where was I? Yes, stagnant as the water at the bottom of a standing pond. Yes, that's good. Now, note here. Right. After a while, it seemed as if the figures moved when not being watched. That there was not a breath of air in the chamber to stir a curtain or to rustle a hanging drapery. There, good. Now it's fine. Now, clean it up and get this bit on tape. The dim, unvarying light fell on the rows of figures, which... Hello, something moved again. I could swear it. It's Crippen. Every time I take my eyes off him, he moves. Damn it, they all do. Oh, God, I better have a drink. All the same, it's not good enough. I'm going upstairs. I'm not going to spend the night with a lot of shifty, bloody dummies who move when you're not looking. What's the time? 1:30. 6 more hours. I'll never do it. What's that? He's Crippen again. I nearly caught him that time. You better be careful, Crippen! And all the rest of you! I'll smash you all to pieces! You hear? Do you hear me? Why don't I go? Why should I sit here scribbling when I can write all this up tomorrow? Who would know? What's that? All right. Now. I'm Raymond Hewson, freelance writer. I've been here in this Chamber of Horrors for, a few hours. My nerves are beginning to play tricks on me. And that's all they are, tricks. Oh, I'm a living, breathing man, and all around me are statues, dummies. They can't move, and they can't whisper. Neither can they breathe. But by God, one of them is. Somebody else in this room is breathing. You, Dr. Baudet, you moved. Yes, you did. Damn you, I saw you.
Good evening, monsieur.
I was right, you did move.
Quite right, my dear friend. And now, let me get off this ridiculous platform.
Don't come near me!
Really, Mr. Hewson, let us not be melodramatic, huh? Oh, that's better. One gets so stiff standing in the same position all the time. I need hardly tell you that I never expected to have the pleasure of a companion here for the night.
Oh, what the devil are you?
My dear sir, have no illusions. I'm not one of these contemptible effigies miraculously come to life. I am Dr. Baudet himself.
But I don't understand.
How do I come to be here? Let me explain. You see, for some time now, I've been living quietly in England. Well, late this afternoon, as I was passing this building, I saw a policeman regarding me somewhat too closely. So I mingled with the crowd and came in here. And when I entered this chamber, I saw at once my means of escape from the so inquisitive policeman.
I don't understand.
You have no imagination at all, sir. It was so simple. I raised a cry of fire, stripped my effigy of the cape, hid it, and simply took its place on the platform. Et voila!
But you must have been there for hours. Didn't anyone notice you?
One small boy only. He screamed and said that he saw me moving. I understood that his parents threatened to give him a good hiding on his return home. I can only hope that the threat has been executed to the letter.
So you really are Dr. Baudet. What a scoop.
Scoop? Oh, yes, yes. Well, we shall see.
And to think I nearly packed up and went. Fancy missing this. What a story. Dr. Baudet, the French Jack the Ripper.
A slight exaggeration.
But why do it? Why commit these awful murders?
You see, the world is divided into two classes. The collectors and the non-collectors. The collectors collect anything according to their individual tastes. I collect throats. No, do not attempt to move. It is useless. You cannot move unless I say so.
But my notes, I must get all this down. And I'll never have another chance like this.
Exactement. You have given me the opportunity of gratifying my somewhat unusual whim.
No. Just hold on a minute.
Oh, but you have a skinny neck, sir. If you will overlook such a personal remark.
Now, you look here, Dr. Bloody Baudet. If you think
you can never have selected you from choice. Oh, I like thick necks. Thick, red, meaty necks. But enough talking.
Enough talking? I haven't even started yet. I'm not alone here, you know. I've only got to shout, and the watchman will come running. And where will you be then?
This is a little French razor. The blade, you observe, is very narrow.
Look. Look, I promise not to say a word about you being here and not to use the story until...
Does the razor suit you, sir? Well, we shall see.
Look, I won't use a damn story at all.
No, sir. Your appeals are useless. You are now completely under my control. You cannot even speak unless I tell you to do so. Now, you will please have the goodness to raise your chin a little. Thank you. Oh, just a fraction more. Merci, monsieur. Merci. That is parfait.
Poor Raymond. When I had finished reading his notes, I turned my attention to the tape recorder. Of course, the batteries had run flat hours ago, but the ever-obliging Raymond had brought along his own replacements, which were lying conveniently at his feet, unused. Carefully, I rewound the tape and switched the machine over to playback. Standing there in silence, the three of us listened as the tape played, hoping perhaps to find the answer to Raymond's sudden death. When it had finished, we stood there looking at each other, puzzled. Then I rewound the last few moments of the tape and played it again. And only then did I understand.
Now, you look here, Dr. Bloody Baudet. If you think... Enough talking, I haven't even started yet. I'm not alone here, you know. I've only got to shout, and the watchman will come running. Where will you be then? Look here, look, I promise not to say a word about you being here and not to use a story until... Look, I won't use a damn story at all.
The waxwork figures stood apathetically in their places, waiting to be admired by the crowds who would soon wander fearfully among them. In their midst, in the center gangway, Raymond Hewson sat still, leaning far back in his armchair. His chin was tilted up, as if he were waiting to receive attention from a barber, and although there was not a scratch upon his throat, he was cold and dead. His previous employers had been wrong in crediting him with no imagination. If anything, he had an overabundance of that particular commodity. As I left that sinister chamber, I glanced back. Dr. Baudet on his pedestal watched the dead man unemotionally. He did not move, nor was he capable of motion, but then, after all, he was only a waxwork. One thing, however, still troubles me, that laughter on the tape. Of course, it could have been on the tape already. It has since, I confess, crossed my mind that perhaps Miss Frayne had added it, hoping for extra publicity. Perhaps I thought that was why she had not called the police at once. But these thoughts I dismissed as being both ungallant and impractical. But what else could explain it? The alternative is too awful to think of. Could it really have been the waxworks, those vacant, staring effigies laughing at the fate of Raymond Hewson? Could it? I wonder. Well, good night. Sleep well.
That was Vincent Price bringing you The Price of Fear. Also starring in The Waxwork was Peter Barkworth, with Cyril Shapps, Joan Cooper, and Christopher Bidmead. The Waxwork was first recounted by A.M. Burridge, dramatized by Barry Campbell, and produced by John Dias.